Hi there, it's me, Miss Britta. I have a really awesome book to read to you this week. It's one of my favorite stories, and it's a different version. That means I've read this story before, and the pictures looked different because the illustrator did it differently. And there are some other things that are different too. So some of this story might sound very familiar, and some of it will be brand new to you. This is called Los Tres Pequeños Javelinas. The Three Little Javelinas. This is written by Susan Lowell and illustrated by Jim Harris. Once upon a time, way out in the desert, there were three little javelinas. They are wild, hairy, southwestern cousins of pigs. Their heads were hairy, their backs were hairy, and their bony legs, all the way down to their hard little hooves, were very hairy. But their snouts were soft and pink. One day, the three little javelinas trotted away to seek their fortunes. In this hot, dry land, the sky was almost always blue. Steep, purple mountains looked down on the desert where the cactus forest grew. Soon the little javelinas came to a spot where the path divided, and each one went a different way. The first little javelina wandered lazily along. He didn't see a dust storm whirling across the desert until it caught him. The whirlwind blew away and left the first little javelina sitting in a heap of tumbleweeds. Brushing himself off, he said, "I'll build a house with them." And in no time, he did. Then along came a coyote. He ran through the desert so quickly and so quietly that he was almost invisible. In fact, this was only one of Coyote's many magical tricks. He laughed when he saw the tumbleweed house and smelled the javelina inside. A tender, juicy piggy, he thought. Coyote was tired of eating mice and rabbits. He called out sweetly, little pig, let me come in." "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," shouted the first javelina, who had had a lot of hair on his chinny chin chin. "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in," said Coyote. He's blowing hard. And he huffed, and he puffed, and he blew the little tumbleweed house away. But in all the hullabaloo, the first little javelina escaped and went looking for his brother and sister. Coyote, who was very sneaky, tiptoed along behind. The second little javelina walked for miles among giant cactus plants called saguaros. They held their red ripe fruit high in the sky, but they made almost no shade, and the little javelina grew so hot. Then he came upon a Native American woman who was gathering sticks from inside a dried up cactus. She planned to use those long sticks called saguaro ribs to knock down the sweet cactus fruit. The second little javelina said, "Please, may I have some sticks to build a house?" "Hao," she said, which means yes in the language of the desert people. Well, I hear a truck. You can tell I'm outside reading today. When he was finished building his house, he lay down in the shade. Then his brother arrived, panting from the heat, and the second little javelina moved over and made a place for him. Pretty soon, Coyote found the saguaro rib house. He used his magic to make his voice sound just like another javelina's. Little pig, let me come in," he called, but the little javelinas were suspicious. The second one cried, "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin." "Bah," thought Coyote, "I'm not going to eat your hair." Then Coyote smiled, showing all his sharp teeth. "I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in." So he huffed and he puffed, and all of the saguaro ribs came tumbling down. The two little javelinas escaped into the desert. Still not discouraged, Coyote followed. The third little javelina trotted through the beautiful palo verde trees with green trunks and yellow flowers. She saw a snake sliding by, smooth as oil. A hawk floated round and round above her. Then she came to a place where a man was making adobe bricks from mud and straw. The bricks lay on the ground, baking in the hot sun. The third little javelina thought for a moment and said, "May I please have a few adobes to build a house?" "Sí," answered the man, which means yes in Spanish, which was the brickmaker's language. She's going to build a house out of adobe. So the third little javelina built herself a house out of the adobe bricks. It was solid, cool in the summer, and warm in the winter. When her brothers found her, she welcomed them in and locked the door behind them. Coyote followed their trail. Little pig, let me come in," he called. The three little javelinas looked out the window. This time, Coyote pretended to be very old and weak. He was tricking. With no teeth and a sore paw, but they were not fooled. "No, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," called back the third javelina. "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in," said Coyote. He grinned, thinking of the wild pig dinner to come. "Just try it," shouted the third little javelina. So Coyote huffed and puffed, but the adobe bricks did not budge. Again, Coyote tried. "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house in." The three little javelinas covered their hairy ears, but nothing happened. The javelinas peeked out the window. The tip of Coyote's raggedy tail whisked right past their noses. He was climbing up on the tin roof. Next, Coyote used his magic to make himself very skinny. "The stovepipe," gasped the third little javelina. Quickly, she lighted a fire inside her wood stove. "What a feast it will be," Coyote said to himself. He squeezed into the stovepipe. "I think I'll eat them with hot red chili sauce," he said. Look at that stovepipe. If there's a fire in there, I wonder what will happen to Coyote. Then the three little javelinas heard an amazing noise. It was not a bark. It was not a cackle. It was not a howl. It was not a scream. It was all of those sounds together. Yip, 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 yow! Away ran the coyote in a puff of smoke. The three little javelinas lived happily ever after in the adobe house. And if you ever hear Coyote's voice way out in the desert at night, you know what he's remembering. Coming down that stovepipe. The end. I love this story extra because I used to live in the desert in a place called Phoenix. And I used to go for hikes out in the saguaros all the time. And I saw people building things out of saguaro sticks, but not houses. My house was made of a material similar to the adobe bricks, so it never blew down, which was good. Because even though this is a pretend story where the javelinas, the pigs talk, and the coyotes talk, in real life, we need shelter. We need places that won't fall down. I hope you enjoyed this story. I'll see you next time.